Muted.
So this morning we're going to talk about West Virginia Universal Pre-K classroom budgets. This is something that we really want to make sure that we cover very thoroughly because there is a new classroom budget worksheet. It's called the Classroom Budget and Cost Allocation Worksheet. We're going to take you through that this morning, among other things. So let's go ahead and get started. Just a second. All right, so a couple of things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about three key factors today. One is the Classroom Budget and Cost Allocation Worksheet. This will replace the old budget form. So the reason that we're doing that is because over the past year, and actually it started last year, we put together a budget committee to look at the budget form and how those budget forms were being completed. And there were a few things that that committee really looked at for change. And so we're going to talk about that today. Two other key areas we're going to talk about. One is the funding and resources report that pre-K coordinators have to do annually. And then we're going to end with a discussion about the total estimated allowance for early childhood programs. And that's the report that is provided by the Office of School Finance here at the Department of Education that illustrates an estimated per child amount that's attributed to universal preschool. And so we're going to go through each of these three key factors this morning through the webinar. If you have a question through the process, don't hesitate to type it into the chat box. We're gonna keep monitoring it, but we'll make sure that we've answered every question at the end too. So you can save your questions for the end, or you can type them as we go. We'll just go through and make sure that we've answered all of them. So let's just delve right into the first factor, and that's the Classroom Budget and Cost Allocation Worksheet. Now these were distributed through the listserv when the registration for the webinar went out. I think it was on Monday. And a couple of documents that you should have been able to download with that email was the cost allocation worksheet and instructions for completion. These actually will be a part of a much bigger document on collaboration, and we'll talk about that document at the end too. So first and foremost, I think we need to really point out that the Classroom Budget and Cost Allocation Worksheet is required. It must be completed for each collaborative classroom. So anytime there's a contractual agreement that notes any classroom in it, there must be a classroom budget worksheet for each classroom. And I'll take you through the new form, but I'll also show you how you can use one Excel file to create different worksheets so that you have one capturing the cost of each and every classroom. So that means if you have 40 collaborative classrooms, each of those 40 collaborative classrooms have to have one of these classroom budget worksheets. I know that it may seem like a lot, but you all capture this information in your contracts, and this is just a worksheet to allocate how funds are being contributed in a collaborative classroom. This worksheet is designed to illustrate the cost and resources that each partner brings to the table. If there are things that one program wants to have in place, but it's not necessarily something that is required of both, it may or may not be captured in the collaborative worksheet, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along too. And then the other point that we want to kind of just talk about before we go on into the nuts and bolts of it is that the collaborative classroom budget worksheet, it's a total estimated cost. Basically, you're predicting, you know, ballpark what the teacher is going to cost, what the assistant teacher is going to cost, what the facilities are going to cost, but it is an estimate. It is not a precise number. And, you know, we know that things can happen and budgets can change, and we'll talk about how that's captured at the end. But it is an estimated worksheet. So we have an Excel file that has the opportunity for different spreadsheets, and it includes classroom information, allocations, and signatures. And let's just break that down for you. Oops. So I'm going to take just a minute to pull up the actual spreadsheet. And I'm going to hone in on different sections of this. Okay, so let's first look at the top section. And what we wanted to provide with the instructions were just step-by-step on how to complete this document for each classroom. But we know that we can't include everything. While we try to include a lot of things, we can't capture everything that you might want to include in this. So as we go through that, just remember that there may be something that you capture in a section that we didn't discuss, and that's okay, as long as when you sit down with your partners and you complete these as partners, then you're comfortable with where you put costs and allocate where each thing goes. So sections 1 through 5 are basically pretty self-explanatory. You enter on number 1, you enter the county name. Number 2, the school year. So every year you may have the same projections every year, so you might, for a particular classroom, so you might just want to go in and change the school year. Unless there's a substantial change in the budget, you know, you might be able to just tweak these every year, because what we try to do is not change these. Now, this form has been in place for a long time, but these changes were really, really necessary. And so while we hate to make changes to forms because it's, you know, you all get used to utilizing them, and it, you know, takes a little more time to start a new one, the changes that we did put in place were very, very important to do. So you may want to just change the school year on number 2. Number 3, the classroom name. Now this is very important that everybody be on the same page with the classroom name, and it says on number 3, as reported in the ELRS. So what is the name that you officially give this? This should match, if this is a collaboration between a Head Start and an LEA, you want to make sure that you have named the classroom the same on both sides, because that's what should be illustrated in the collaborative contract. That's what should be in the ELRS. That's what should be reported to the federal government in the Head Start grants as well. So you want to, and anywhere else. You just want to make sure that you're all on the same page. And, you know, you might think, wow, why is she saying that? Honestly, we've had 3 or 4 different classroom names for one classroom, and it is very confusing among the partners. So if you have, you know, other folks looking in at your classrooms, you know, visiting your classrooms, a federal reviewer as part of the PreK program reviews, it gets really confusing. And you want to make sure that in each school, everyone knows the name of the classroom. So you want to make sure that that's consistent on this form as well as everywhere else. The projected enrollment. This is an interesting space, because projected enrollment is total projected enrollment. You won't know when you complete this worksheet how many kids will be enrolled in Head Start, how many kids will be enrolled in Head Start and PreK. you won't know that because this is done as part of your collaborative contract. So your projected enrollment will be the number that can be enrolled in that classroom. So if you have enough square footage to enroll 20 children, then that's what you should have in this space. If you don't have square footage for 20 children, you indicate the maximum projected enrollment for that classroom. If you, let's say you cap a classroom at 12 every year, and that's what you've indicated as your classroom capacity on the ELRS, then that's the number that should be here. So there is, on the ELRS, under the classroom information, there's a classroom capacity in each classroom, and this should match what that classroom capacity is that you reported for on the ELRS on your program data. All right, and then the designated homeschool. So if this is not within a classroom or within an on-site location, then you would indicate the designated homeschool for this classroom. This has been a little tricky, but I think it's getting better with the induction of the ELRS. If it is on school property, if a classroom is located on school property, and that school is recognized in WEVIS, it should be located, there shouldn't be another name here. For instance, let's say you have a preschool in a separate wing of a high school. That high school is the home school for that preschool, even though the children who are enrolled in that classroom will go to another elementary school. For that year, those kids are enrolled under the high school and not under the elementary school that they will attend. Because in WEVIS, the high school is recognized as its own school, and it's an on-site location, but it's a high school. And I know that's a little confusing, so if you have questions about that, don't forget to ask them. Because even, we have some schools that are designated as off-site because the kids will not go to kindergarten there. Maybe there's not a kindergarten there. So you'll want to clarify if you have questions about that. But if it's an off-site location, maybe it's in a child care center or a separate Head Start building, that would be an off-site location. And typically this is where you turn your attendance in to be entered into WEVIS, typically. Okay, so let's talk about the budget categories, which is section 6, and that is all of these. And I know that the form looks a little strange because you have your budget sections, then the categories that are broken down, then you have total cost, then you have the county, so this will be the LEA information, and then collaborative partner 1 and 2. You can list 2 partners, and I know that this looks strange. It looks like we're going from right to left, but when the discussion about the layout of the form happened, some stakeholders felt it very important that the total cost be listed in the center of the document for a couple of reasons. One, you can see, it's very evident in center stage that the total cost is how much it costs to run a program. But the other thing is your total cost is, when you're looking at a budget, you go from what you have and based on who's contributing. So that's why it was put in there. It might seem a little strange, but I think we'll get used to it. When you look at budgets in general, you usually have an amount that you're allowed to spend, and so then you start to pull apart, and that's kind of where the formatting came from. So anything that is contributed by the county will be included under the county column, and then collaborative partners 1 and 2. If you just have one partner, then you would only fill out the collaborative partner 1. And then if there are 2, you just have to decide who's 1 and 2. And you also need to enter the name of the collaborative partner. So if it's if the Head Start partner is collaborative 1, you would just type in their name there, and collaborative partner 2. So then let's look at each of the categories. So you have your budget section, and we have salaries, wages, and benefits, facility costs. Oh, I think I deleted facilities cost. Okay. On the form. Whoops, sorry about that. So facilities costs, classroom supplies, food, transportation, professional development, and program assessment. You should be able to fit your budget and cost allocation. You should be able to contribute all of the cost allocations to any of these categories or these sections. And so then you have to determine which category it goes into.
Can you give a specific on the 2 partners?
Sure. Okay, so we had a question. Before we go on to each of the sections, let's talk about the 2 partners. If you have a 3-way collaboration, and an example of that, the first one that comes to mind is from my past work in Pocahontas County. School Days Child Care Center and North Central Head Start and Pocahontas County Schools are all in the Child Care Center and School Days. So the first partner might be North Central Head Start, and the second partner might be School Days Child Care Center. So these are the 3-way collaborations. Nicholas County has a couple of 3-way collaborations too, and Hardy County as well, I think. Yeah. So there are some classrooms that they're Head Start services, child care services, and pre-K. And so there may be 2 different contracts, or among the partners. I hope that answered the question.
This one will be answered. That's about where you put support people.
Okay, so let's just kind of go through salaries, wages, and benefits. Now remember, if this form was revised to capture as much as possible, but there's a couple of spaces where other is included, and that should capture some of the categories. So under salaries, wages, and benefits, we have the teacher. So the classroom teacher is, you would go into, let's say that the collaborative partner employs the teacher. So the salary, wages, and benefits of that teacher would be captured in this column. If the county doesn't have any contributions to this particular item, then it would be left blank. And of course, if there's only 1 partner, this whole column would be left blank. If there are 2 partners, whoever pays the salary of the teacher that's where it would be indicated. So if partner 2 paid for the teacher, then you would indicate it in that column for collaborative partner 2. This column will automatically be generated. So let's just say that the collaborative partner provided $4,000 for the teacher, and the county provides $30,000, and so it's automatically generated. You can see that. And that's how it happens under the total cost column for every section. So it's automatically generated. One thing I do want to point out is if the per child amount is provided by the community partner, the county will place the amounts in the budget categories based on what you've agreed the funds will support. So if you give a per child amount and you've agreed that that per child amount is going to be to pay the salary of the teacher, then you will include that in that section. So let's just say that for simplicity's sake, the example that we have for the teacher, the county is giving $30,000 based on a per child amount, but you expect that the salary of the teacher be paid with that per child amount, you would still include the $30,000 under the county contribution. And then the collaborative partner indicates how much they would contribute, even if that includes paying insurance or other benefits. And so you would actually just take the total cost of the teacher and break it down based on what you've agreed in the contract. You should be able to trace what you put on this form back to the contract, though. You're going to see a trend as we talk about this go through. What we want you to be able to do is to justify how the pre-K dollars are being reinvested into that classroom. And that includes a per child amount. So when you give a per child amount, it's just not, I'm giving this because you already have a program and you know, we have to be partners. While you may feel that way, that money does need to be earmarked for costs for that classroom. And so this form should actually illustrate how that money is being reinvested into the program.
Do we adjust the administrators based on the number of students served compared to the total school enrollment?
Okay. So Rhonda just asked a question that has come across the chat box. And basically the answer is yes. If you have, you know, you have several administrators who are invested, and you can see that there is an administrator section. This could include more than one administrator. So in a collaborative classroom, you have a Head Start director who's an administrator of that classroom. You also have principals, but it could also include pre-K coordinator. You know, you want to determine that as a team. And I think that's what's really important to note, that you just cannot just do this form. It has to be it has to be a part of the collaborative contract, and it has to illustrate what you've agreed and what the cost of those administrators. So you would take a salary and you would divide it among your classrooms. And you know, dividing it among children that are enrolled is probably not the best way to do it, because enrollment fluctuates. And so even though you may have a per child amount fluctuate, remember this is an estimate. You know, you want to get it as accurate as possible, but down to the penny just isn't possible. And so the administrator cost is going to be the administrator cost no matter how many kids are enrolled in that classroom. And the teacher cost is still going to be the teacher cost. You're still going to have a teacher who gets that salary no matter how many kids are enrolled, and the same with any of the staff and things like that. We also have in this section, just to kind of move along through each one of those, the next one is the ECAT. This is the designated ECAT. This is not a third person, a classroom assistant. It's not those additional people. It is the designated ECAT. We also included a section for substitutes. So if there's money earmarked for substitutes in the contract by one or more partners, that can be captured in each of the appropriate columns. We talked about the administrator custodians. So if the custodians are employed by one of the partners, then you want to make sure that you capture that in the appropriate column. Food service staff, they can be captured in this as well. And then other. Now other was left open. This is kind of important under the salaries, wages, and benefits, because this could include other non-supervisory staff. If they're supervisory staff, you want to capture them in administrator. But this could be curriculum coaches, a third assistant teacher, family resource coordinators from Head Start, school nurses, transportation staff, and there's a list of possibilities in the instructions, but you know, your program may have different folks that you would include in this other section.
Is there a formula for determining what portion of the per child amount can go to ward administrators, custodians, cooks, and so forth?
Okay, so the question, I'm going to repeat the question, or Rhonda, if you don't mind, repeat it again and a little louder.
Is there a formula for determining what portion of the per child amount can go toward administrators, custodians, cooks, and so forth?
There is not a formula. You all decide that locally.
And they're asking, where does the teacher's assistant go? That's the ECAT.
Well, are we talking ECAT or an additional third person in the classroom? Because some classrooms do have an additional third person. If it's an additional third person, it would be captured under other. The person who's designated as the assistant teacher or with the ECAT credential has to be captured under the ECAT. All right. So let's look at facilities costs. So the major budget categories are my bad, I'm skipping around. For facilities costs, this is the cost of space and what you need to run the space for a pre-K classroom. This includes classroom, playground, or gross motor areas, additional space necessary to support pre-K. Now you all have to decide if the gym in your building, if it's a part of a building that would have to be there regardless of whether there was pre-K classrooms there, you may or may not want to include that. How far you go with this, I mean, we want you to be realistic. We don't want you to kill yourselves with completion of the forms, but really to capture what it does cost to have the facilities, to have the classroom staff and all of the other budget sections. So you want to look at the space that's necessary to operate pre-K. And this would include utilities, equipment, HVAC, and things like that, lighting. So we have it broken down into space, rent, or lease. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Cost of renovations. Now this is one of those categories that may not actually be captured one year, but you might determine through something happening, natural disaster, or just time and wear and tear on a space, that renovations might have to happen. So you want to maybe look at that later in the year when pre-K coordinators have to report any renovations that have to happen as part of that, especially if it's a substantial amount of money. Utilities, this is annual cost of utilities. Again, if you're in a school building and your budget form is one classroom in a two-story building, you would just look at you would come up with a formula to get the closest estimate for utilities for that. And this would include electricity, water, sewer, and internet. Your internet and your phone costs can be included in this too. Custodial supplies. This would, in a much bigger school, this may be just a small portion. Contracted custodial work. This is if you have someone who's not employed by one of the partners who comes in. You might have a cleaning service. If you have a cleaning service, you would capture the cost of the contracted custodial there. But if they're employed by a partner, then you would capture that in salaries, wages, and benefits. Insurance, this will be property insurance that you are required by law to carry. This would include any supplemental insurances that you might have as an agency or program. There's a variety of insurances out there, but that's where you would capture it. And then anything other. that that is not captured in those categories. For instance, pest management or lawn care, something like that. The next section is classroom supplies. This includes consumables, those things that are used up and need to be replenished. Equipment, materials, these are your furniture, your playground equipment, your basic equipment such as, even carpeting and chairs and things like that. This would also include things purchased specifically to implement curriculum, manuals, curriculum kits, things like that. And then food has two major categories. The actual food, things that are going to be consumed to meet meal requirements. In some instances, you may have a separate meal contract, and we'll not delve into that today, but you might want to look at your meal contract in order to help you with that section if you do have meal contracts. And then kitchen supplies. These are anything to help with providing food, but that's not consumed. Transportation, it is only one category, and it would include costs for vehicles and vehicle maintenance and inspection and storage. But you would capture all of those things in one area. Section 12 is professional development. This includes contracted services. So if you brought trainers in or rented space to have a training, things like that, that would be captured under contracted services. So consultants, training facilities, maybe equipment that you had to rent or something to facilitate training. Travel costs would be included in those, lodging, transportation, meals, things like that. And then materials, any supplies necessary to support the professional development. This could include, software, office supplies are required for that. You all would decide. We have a, just a call it a starter list, but you would determine based on what professional development is being offered to the staff for this class, for each classroom. And then tuition reimbursement is also included in that, and stipends. We just kind of wanted to go through those really quickly. And the very last one is program assessment. And it is its own category. There aren't, or it is its own section. There aren't a lot of categories, but it would include materials, assessment tools, training, contracted services. So anything related to program assessment, any costs that are related to completion of your program assessment process would be captured in this section too. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of the page, because as you're completing your contracts and these budget sheets, you'll have a grand total in these sections, so you can see based on what I had entered for the teacher's salary, the grand totals at the bottom. And there's a space for each of the partners to sign and date, and they should need to be attached to your collaborative contracts when those are signed and dated as well. So when, and right now in Policy 2525, it says that those are due September 1st. And what's due is actually verification. So each pre-K coordinator is responsible for submitting a letter saying that contracts and budgets are signed and in place, and they're required to list each of the partners that they have the contracts and budgets in place for. And that's how we verify those. We don't ask for those contracts and budgets to be submitted. We do review those as part of the pre-K program review process. So what annually what pre-K coordinators have to do is submit a letter that that's done. And I think it's important that pre-K coordinators do share that with their partners so that they know the letter is, has been submitted.
Okay, we have a question. When you say that we determine the salary line items, do you mean the county determines that for us, or we determine that with the county in our agreement or contract?
Well, I was just looking. The line items have to be determined together. So if you're the partner who's providing the salary, you have to report what salary is, what the salary is, and indicate it in the collaborative partner column. So that can't be determined for you, because unless the partner is, whoever the partner is that is providing the salary has to put that in the column. Does that make sense? I hope that.
I tell Susie if not to call us.
Yeah.
If the Board of Ed gives a per child amount to the community partner, the community partner has to be very specific to where they are using that money.
Absolutely, because the money is being generated for that class or for the enrollment of children in pre-K. So you need to know how that money is being attributed to that classroom. If you're getting a per child amount for a classroom, you have to be able to justify to boards of directors, to boards of education, to taxpayers on how that money is being utilized to implement that classroom. And you should have agreed. Some folks feel that it's much simpler to provide a per child amount, but you still need to illustrate how that's being used to run that classroom. Yes. Discretionary funds, it's very vague, and if I'm paying taxes, as a taxpayer, I would want to know how my money is going into the school system, how my money is being utilized to educate children. Discretionary cost was just kind of a catch-all, and you can't really tell how the money is being reinvested into the classroom. So that was actually removed. You should be able to articulate how the money is being spent in these budget sections and categories. If you run into an issue where you really can't articulate, let us know, and we will update the form.
You got it.
Okay. I did want to show you really quickly, you can change the name of the classroom. So you've downloaded the form and you want, let's say you live in Kanawha County and you want to do one document, you would rename this with my class, oops. Yeah. You would rename the classroom ABC. And now I'm putting specifically how this is in the ELRS. So ABC Classroom now has a budget form. I want to do another one. You go down to the bottom of the, oh, well, that didn't work. He told me it would. Actually, what you can do is copy it, go to sheet 1, and paste, and you have another form. Or you can have separate forms for each one, however you prefer to do it. Okay, so the second part of this is addressing universal pre-K funding and resources. So in policy 2525, it says that a comprehensive preschool fiscal report must be submitted annually. And what does that look like? And I was kind of surprised to find out that not all collaborative partners knew that this is what happened as far as end of the year reporting. So by September 1st, each of the pre-K coordinators need to go in and enter pre-K funding for the year before. So this is a year behind, and basically what they do, what each pre-K coordinator does is they go on a website, they enter their county information, and then they have certain information that they have to fill out. And so basically they work with all the other partners and professionals in their programs to figure out how much they're going to report based on what's been spent in pre-K. Now, the budget forms that we talked about could be utilized for this, barring that other, some changes didn't happen. So I want to share just exactly what they are expected to do, so that when, and some of you already may know that they come to you at the end of the year and they say, okay, so how much did you spend in pre-K last year? Do you have a total amount? Even though you have those classroom budgets, and they can reflect classroom budgets minus unexpected costs, there may be those unexpected costs that you'll want to capture, because basically what we have to report is spending county by county and totally in the state. So each pre-K coordinator goes in and has to enter the school aid funding formula, and this can come off of the budget or the total estimated allowance for early childhood programs. But they also work with the treasurer to make sure that what they're reporting is accurate. Preschool special needs funding that went into preschool into the program, and it varies year to year based on the special needs of the children enrolled that year. And that's also looked at with the treasurer and the special education directors. Any Title I, pre-K coordinators work with the treasurer and the Title I coordinators to figure out how much money or any costs attributed from Title I to pre-K. And pre-K is looked at like any other grade as far as Title I funding goes. So you could actually allocate a small portion of your Title I for parent involvement activities and things to implement Title I programming. Head Start, this could include the budget forms, but you'll want to share with your Head Start partner, or Head Start partners should expect that you'll know what was reported as far as Head Start contributions county by county. School Building Authority, this is only if you get funds from SBA. Many times you don't get funding for it, and how it is directly related to pre-K. You might get renovations at the high school in your county through SBA, or not renovations or new building or something, but that wouldn't be reported here. So if it's in an elementary school, it would probably just be a portion of it. TANF and child care, these are absolutely pieces from the budget form, but also children who are enrolled in child care centers, who participate in before and after care, who receive child care subsidy, that can be captured in this too. Again, an exact amount is really hard to achieve, so you want to make sure that you capture a good reflection of it, but down to the dollar or the change is not going to be capturable. Any private donations, this would include donations, maybe some grant money. Let's say someone wrote a grant for playgrounds, and now you have a playground that's appropriate for the children in a school, and that could be captured here. And then any other. Okay, we have another question.
This is back before this, I think, but are there other similar requirements for public classrooms ran by the county to list the money out in the same manner? If so, should there be public access to that information if requested? When you were saying that give account to the taxpayer dollars when we're doing the budget, this is for collaborative.
Yeah, the reason that this is important is because it's addressing collaborative classrooms and you're blending funding. So it's really important to illustrate and be very transparent about the blending of funding. Annual budgets for school systems are required to be public, but you would have to talk to your CSBOs or your chief school business operators and your treasurers, or you know, some counties post their information on their website. But that stuff's all voted and determined by the county boards of education. So you'd have to go to those people to determine that. But it is public information because it is, you know, taxpayer dollars.
Teresa asked, just to reiterate, when determining the projected enrollment, you should use the possible number that can be in that classroom, correct?
Yes, yes, that is correct. All right, so let's go to the next section. There have been lots of questions about the public school support program, total estimated allowance for early childhood programs. This is the document that shows the per child amount that was distributed through the listserv a few weeks ago. This is a document that is provided by the Office of School Finance that shows that state aid funding, estimated state aid funding based on the October 1st head count or the second month head count, and it does include local share. So I wanted to just talk a few minutes about this because we will be distributing this every year. The Office of School Finance provides it every year. We will be posting it on our website, and every year you will get an email over the listserv with this document attached and also a link to show where it will be posted on the website. Basically what this includes is the net enrollment for the October 1st head count, and it includes information about, you know, the number of teachers allowed to be employed based on the enrollment, the number of assistant teachers allowed to be employed based on that enrollment, the average total amount, the average salary of the professionals, and the average amount of money for the total enrollment. And then it's also broken down into a per pupil amount. So basically you take the total amount of money you receive based on enrollment and divide it by the number of enrolled, and that's how they get the per child, the per pupil amount. How this money is provided in each classroom or across the program is determined through overall budgets, through CSBOs, treasurers, but also through collaborative contracts. We give this as a general guide. This does not mean that if you're a collaborative partner and you're in, and I'm going to pull the form up real quickly just to show you. So if you're in Barber County and the estimated amount that they will receive, now remember, they haven't even received this money. So this is for this current school year. Their total estimated school allowance, student aid funding, is $697,791. So you break it down based on 131.08 children. So that's like 131 kids and maybe a foot. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. April Fools. And then you have your per child amount, because that total amount was divided by 131.08. Then you have your per child amount. There are administrative costs that need to come off of that, and honestly, if you decide to do a per child amount, there are a lot of factors that need to be considered when you look at that. Is the space that you're going to be utilizing completely operated by a partner? What other things are going to be in place or provided by the county? So the per child amount should not be that per child amount less whatever the percentage is for administrative costs. It has to be individually discussed and determined based on other resources. So if all the equipment is provided by the LEA, including consumables and all training, well, you might have a much smaller per child amount than someone who says, okay, we're going to operate this classroom, and as a partner, we're going to operate this classroom and provide all the professional development. So you have to look at all of the factors that are going into that classroom, and that's where the classroom budgets are so important in helping determine, these are the classroom budgets and the contracts and determination of a per pupil amount has to all be decided in conjunction with one another. It's not very black and white when it comes to allocating a per pupil amount. And I just want to make that very clear. We do not distribute this based on this is what you should receive, because we can't tell you that. You have, as partners, you have to sit down and determine that together and decide what's really fair and equitable to make sure that the classroom is operating the way that it should, that the curriculum is being implemented, that staff development is appropriate, and much of what you decide should be based on your continuous quality improvement process.
Do they put the early literacy grant under private or other?
The early literacy grant may or may not be included in this. Those funds are to actually implement the early literacy across the whole program. So if there are specific funds that are being earmarked for pre-K, you could capture portions of that. It would just you would probably break it down in the classroom budget, but in the overall budget reporting at the end of the year, you wouldn't necessarily capture all of that in there, only if it's directly attributing classrooms, or contributing to classrooms, I'm sorry. This is just the website where the total estimated allowance for early childhood programs will be housed every year. If you click on it, it actually takes you to County Collaborative Team Resources. So if you're on the Office of Early Learning's website, you go to Universal Pre-K and County Collaborative Team Resources, and that's where that form will be housed.
Is there a way to print these slides?
Okay, so we have a question, are there a way to print these slides? We will actually I post the PowerPoint and the documents on the website. They won't be posted until Monday because Matt is not here this week, and so he won't be able to get them up till probably midday Monday. So after Monday, they'll be available. And to get to those, you would actually go to the System of Support page, and that's where we post all of our webinars. So any one that we've done is on this page. This is the one we did a couple of weeks ago, and so it'll be posted under halfway down the page here, and so you'll be able to print. You can use the information as you need to as your core team. We like to make sure that we have all this stuff available for you guys to use. More information on collaboration will be coming. This is actually, all the budget worksheet and the instructions have actually been inserted in a revised document. Right now, when you pull up the Collaborative Partners page, you will see West Virginia Pre-K Partnerships collaborating with community programs. It's actually being revised. It will be ready and in draft form by next Friday, and when we do our spring meetings that are coming up, we will be providing draft documents so that you all can review and provide any last-minute input on the collaboration document, and it will include the roles of the partners, the collaborative early childhood core team, full teams, the addendum process. It's actually a document that's been broken into two sections. One is partnerships and one is the collaborative team, and then it ends with the addendum process. And so basically it's a new Partner 101 document, but it's also a reference for as you go through and do these things annually, you'll be able to utilize this collaboration document as a guide. So it's basically that guidebook for partnership and roles of the core team and the full team. And so all of this is being inserted as part of the collaboration, including contract guidance that, you know, some of that stuff exists already in existence with the document that's there. We're finishing up, there's an FTE memo. We talked about FTEs and what that'll look like with 4 and 5 days with the new requirements for 1,500 minutes and 48,000 minutes per year. All of that information is being captured in this new document to guide us, you know, to guide new and seasoned folks on this process. So we will delve into that guidebook when we come out and do the spring meetings that are coming up. Any other questions? If you think of questions, I know a lot of your core teams are meeting today, and it's a lot of information to go through. If you do have questions, as always, don't hesitate to contact us. We're always here to help, and I do want to thank those folks who started this journey last year with us. We had CSBOs, we had fiscal people from downstairs, we had Head Start directors, child care directors, pre-K coordinators, and other folks who have began this journey literally a year ago to really refine the budgeting process. So we really appreciate the hard work that everyone does to support universal pre-K. This is probably one of the most difficult things for, you know, folks around the nation to wrap their mind around how we do this in pre-K in West Virginia. So we want to make it as transparent, not only, you know, for ourselves, for each county core team member, but, you know, then we can share with the world how this is done too. So we believe in universal pre-K for all 4-year-olds, even outside of West Virginia. So this is something that is really an accomplishment for those who have worked on this over the last decade and for those who have joined us to be that stakeholders group. So I want to thank you all for being so diligent and working through all of these things that you do. So we'll go ahead and conclude with our webinar. Oh wait, there's only 4 more things I need to talk about. No, April Fools. Have a good day.